now what we're gonna do is I got it set up a little bit better. I got my assistant over here holding this, and what we did is I just took a little remote control and slid it underneath the wing just so that I can get the throw right. Sometimes you have to set this up a couple times. Get it lined up so that the top part is flush with the top of the wing. Go ahead and let those go. And then just have your helpers kind of slide those down. You push those down, just kind of one at a time. Just go, there you go. And then have somebody else just kind of hold it in place. Don't push on it. And just kind of slide it like this. Now that's going to give you, let go. That's going to give you your throw this way. You want it to rest peacefully without any force. Up here, you'll have to do the same calibration on the top side as you're up here to make sure that you have good throw. Because if you put pressure on this servo rod and it's not moving freely, these will bind up and they'll fail. And if they fail in flight, your plane's going to do a spiraling effect right into the ground because there's no way you can save it without a flap. So anyway, just that's how you set that up. Over, now we're doing the bottom side. I've extended the servo all the way out on this one so you can try to duplicate it over on this other one. So just get your tape lined up on one edge. Like I said, just, you know, cut the edge off. You won't need that. And then just try to line it up with the other side. But now remember, it's got to throw this way too. So you got to leave yourself enough leeway to do that. Sometimes you have to set it up a couple times to get it right where you need it. So just, you know, be patient. Not too much, not too little. You don't want it too stiff, otherwise your servo won't be able to push it. So make sure it turns both ways freely. Go ahead and put it all back together. Now that you're done, you want to see where this rests all by itself. You see how it rests pretty level? It's kind of where you want to make sure it kind of pops back to that too. It takes a little bit of practice to get these lined up just right. But see how it's got a really nice recoil back to center? That's what you want it to have set up. But you want it to also move very freely too without any resistance before you put the servo connected. See, now it's resting right where it needs to, and that's really what you want. So take some time to set that up, make sure that that's lined up perfectly before you even attach the servo rod to it, and then that way you make sure there's no binding on it. Okay, on this clip right here, I'm going to try to zoom in and get as much of this as I can. It might be one of our longer videos, but it's kind of important. First thing you want to do is always connect up your power to your servo so that you have your servo resting at dead center. I've set these up before when the servo doesn't have any power, and then when you hook it up, then it's not there. But I always like to make sure that you set your throws at 0 before you go through and do any of this adjustment. What I like to do is I use a servo rod that you can get from any hobby store. I get most of my stuff at Hobby Town. They're actually a pretty good supplier of these servo rods. They're really nice, and they're beefy. You can adjust them, you just twist them in and out. I like to use a really high-powered servo horn just so they don't break, and they've actually got some clips in here, so it's really nice. I set that up in place. If you take any of your regular servos, you'll find that the holes are a lot smaller for this big thick wire. So I just go through and drill through it. That way you can get your fitting in there, and then you just want to go ahead and set that up in place. Sounds like my wife's upstairs doing some vacuuming. So, but anyway, I want you to kind of go ahead and just set that in place. You can kind of see as you move it that it's moving up, down, left, right, and make sure that it's the same as your parallel servo. And then just get a good free-flowing. You want your rod to be as straight as possible so it's less restriction. If you bind up these servos, I've found in the past that if you bind them up, what ends up happening is the servos, they just can't handle the pressure, and they'll fail. These servos I got from just an online China hobby store. They're like $2, so they're not really high power, but they work great for this application. And then if they break, they only cost you $2 to replace. So I think I get these from hobbycity.com. So anyway, just get this lined up, and what I like to do is just kind of mark where you want your rod to be positioned. So you want to set it right there. And then you're going to obviously go and trim it down and kind of cut it and put it into place. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this in. You've got your rods that you line up. And so what I do is, remember, now we've marked where we want the rod to go. So this is going to be off to the side just a little bit. So I like to set that in place like that. I'll take just a standard little 90-degree pick. It works really good for balsa. You kind of hold it into place where you want it. Make sure it matches the other side. Just do a little spot. That way you know it's in the right spot. You're set up just like that. So now you've got a little bit of a hole. And I'll take my finger underneath just so I don't push too hard. I want it to actually come through and kind of poke my finger, and then that way, as it starts to come through, I know that I've got just enough in there, and that way it doesn't split your balsa, because balsa is a really thin wood, and it's not very strong. So you just want to go real slow so you don't split your wood. You can drill it if you like, but I like to get my pilot hole in place first. Then I'll take my drill. I'll drill it in place. I like to use these big servo horns. Some people don't. I personally do, because I know they're sound, they're solid. As you can see, there's quite a bit of meat on that, and it may add a little bit of weight to your plane, but if you use a big enough motor and a good sized prop, you shouldn't have that to worry about. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this in here. It's just, you know, got a nut plate on the back side. It's just plastic, so you basically just put that in there through here. So I'm going to go ahead and mount that, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how we adjust everything. Okay, we're back. We're going to go ahead and do some adjustment here on this servo rod so you can see how this works. Like I was telling you before, what I like is this Great Plains servo adjuster. It's actually not an adjuster. What it does is it sets the rod right where you need it, and it puts a 90-degree cut in it. So what I do is just take a magic marker. Like I say, make sure everything's resting at center. Make sure your trims are all centered out. That's important. Make sure you have enough linkage throw here so that if you do need to make some adjustments, you can. And then I just take this and set that right over the servo horn and just draw a black mark right there. Really simple. Then unthread this from your, that's why I really like to use these servo rods. They're just so easy, and once you get comfortable with how to do a couple, I have all my planes. I have like 12 planes, and they all use the same servo rod. They are a little bit heavier, but they're so much more efficient to install. So basically you want to set up, don't know if you can see it from there, I'll kind of zoom in. You want to make sure that this line is right on that pinch weld, and then you just basically just squeeze these, and it does everything for you. It does the bend that you need. It's pretty straight. I mean, if it's not, you can tweak it just a little bit, make it as straight as you need it, and then take your servo horn off, lace that right through there. I'm not in your way there. Put that right in its way, and if you did it correctly, it should be pretty much dead on. But you want to make sure that as you thread this down, and you'll still have some adjustment. I always like, see, some people will take the servo horn on and off. I think that's just a way to strip out your bolt, and I like to use the rod itself and take it on and off and just get it lined up to where it's level. Check your throws, make sure everything's throwing good. If you need a little bit more throw on it before you connect that servo horn, just put a twist on it, and then get everything lined back up. Put it back on right where it needs to be. Test it. And so when you're all done, then you can take your bolt, put it in there, clip off the extra with some regular wire cutters, and you're done. And that's it. And then just glue your, right now my servos are still loose. You can pull them out. Just glue them in with a dab of hot glue, not a lot. I've made mistakes in the past of putting the whole thing with hot glue in there, and they're miserable to get out if you ever break one. So just put a little dab of hot glue on the bottom, press it into place, hold it, and it's done. So